Yes. Okay. Here we are. Gimel Tammuz. A mixed message, Gimel Tammuz. Gimel Tammuz, as you probably know, in history, is hugely positive. I mean, way back when, in the days of Yeshua stopped the sun on Gimel Tammuz. Shemesh begibon dom. It's interesting, the word that's used there about stopping the sun, means like inanimate. It stopped, but it also means to stop speaking, like the word we have in English, dumb, when you stop speaking. And the sun stood still. That was the fact. But it's a mystery. I mean, the sun in its motion, both its movement around in the heavens and its motion of light down here below, its speaking is what gives life to everything, so to speak. And it's very, to me, interesting. And I guess Hashgacha Pratis, it shouldn't be so unusual to realize that this whole Tanya that we're going to do today is going to be about God speaking. And also, side note, this was the day in 1927 when the Frierdiker Rebbe was released from prison, culminating in his in the absolving of his sentence on later in Tammuz when we celebrate the release of the Frierdiker Rebbe. So there's a release and effusion are connected with Gimel Tammuz. In addition to some of the other things which we would like to have the Rebbe here, Beguf Gashmi, for sure, but we are assured that the sun is shining and that the effusions are reaching down here below in everything that we do in our relationship, cultivating our relationship to the Rebbe in whatever ways we do it. So Gimel Tammuz in Hayom Yom speaks as follows. My grandfather, the Rebbe Rashab, said, a Jewish groan, a klechs, it's a great word, klechs, a Jewish groan, which, God forbid, arises from physical misfortune, is also a great tshuva. To just groan. How much more so, then, is a groan arising from spiritual distress, a lofty and effective tshuva? The groan pulls him out of the depths of evil and places him on a firm footing in the realm of good. In English, we might call that spiritual distress kind of groan angst. It's a decent word for that, to express that. Just, please, I'm groaning, help me, God. That's Hayom Yom, and that's the way we feel today. God should help us, and He should bring Melech HaMashiach, the Gilui Mamish, down here below. Okay, lessons in Tanya. We're starting a new Perek. Perek 11, Yud Aleph, page 973. And as I said, we're going to talk about speaking, God speaking. The sun not being silent, but the sun speaking. The sun being the mashal for the king here, right? In our metaphor, the mucker, the source of all energy is the sun and the illuminations that come from it. We've talked about the illuminations that come through God's midos, and we've made the point that He and His midos are one. In the same way, we're going to make the point that He and His so-called speech are one. And again, this is Shah HaYichud, right? To probe into the depths of the nature of God's unity. It's not an amalgam, it's not a composite, it's a singularity, which is unlike any other, enables, number one, that the embodiment of the singularity is present in all the multiplicity. And number two, these are the so-called attributes, although yesterday I said I have to be careful with that word because the word attribute, the way I use it in English, like I attribute something to me, these are not attributes that belong to God, they are expressions of God Himself. So Perek Yud Aleph, moving down from midos to speech. Inegam Asura Mamores. So also meaning as just like the 10 sphira, the 10 midos, are part and parcel of God himself. So likewise, the 10 speeches, which gam kem nikru b'shem maimores, which are also called maimos, speeches that he says, like a mimer. Legabe hanivroyim, and when are they called speeches? Again, they're not speeches by Hashem. Hashem is not in a room rehearsing a speech. Hashem is everywhere, doing what everywhere does all the time. When we receive, just like the light of the sun, right? The sun isn't, in order to give out that light, it's not moving, there's no movement, it's just what the sun does. But in the sun, it's not called light. So in God himself, the speech is not called speech. The speech is only called speech by us, the Nevroim. So these 10 memories are called by the name of speech, Lagabi HaNevroim, in relation to the creations. Bilvad, only in relation to the creation, those with things which are created. Because just like the midos, which is in the soul of a person, when the midos come into, and in order for the midos to come revealed, the masa, indeed, hen bois, they come, these midos come, meluvshis be'oisis hamashab. They come first in letters of thought. You have a thought which gives rise to an expression. Higain midas of chesed, for instance, the attribute of chesed. You want to express kindness, v'rachamin, or mercy. So this midah shebin neshama, which is in the soul, right? So the midah of the soul, yef shelaboli de his galus. That midah of chesed, the rachamim, can't come to revelation, but poil mamish in actuality. Only when you think in your mind and you ruminate about the deed of what you're going to do, this deed of tzedakah and this act of kindness, how to do it in poil mamish. I want to do kindness, that's a midah. It's a natural midah. I'm a rachamim. All Jewish people are rachmonim. They're merciful. But for that mercy to be expressed, I have to think about, first I think, that's the first garment, that's called the 3 garments of the soul. The first garment that the midah is dressed up in is thought. I think about how to express it in this particular moment, in this particular situation, and then I bring it out b'poel mamish, in actuality. You can't do it without first having thought about it. And if you ask others, you command others to do it, like a king, and this is now the mashal of Hashem. Hashem is the King of Kings, right? Melech HaMalachim, King of Melech HaMalachim, the King of Kings of Kings. So the king, the speech in the realm of kingship, in the realm of God as he reveals himself in the midah of Malchus. So then, mislapshis midas achesed. See, he's going to command others to do them, to do things. So the midah of Hesed becomes enclosed, begam oisis hamashav, and also the letters of thought of the king, beoisis hadibur, in speech, and he gives a command. And likewise, the same thing is happening when you speak words of kindness to a friend. In other words, you're not doing an action. Speaking is not maisa, but you're revealing it. You're bringing it out when you, and the analogy of the king speaking to others who are going to do the action is you speaking a word of kindness to a friend, which could motivate the friend to do something. Similarly, by way of example, the attributes of Hashem. There I'm using that word attributes because that's how I've always learned it in translation. But again, these are not attributed to him; they are part and parcel of him. You could also say the measure, the way Hashem measures himself out. That's also, a meaning of the word midah. So the way Hashem measures himself out, delivers himself, so to speak, the Holy One, when they come to revelation, and actuality, instantiation, the tachtoinim down here in the lower worlds. So likewise, nikro gilizu, we call this revelation v'hamshocha and v'hamshochas pa'ula zu, and the drawing down of this action, b'shem maimon. We call it a speech. V'tziref oisius, and we call it combinations of letters. Because it's impossible for there to be any active and continued activity which is drawn out from the midos, the holy midos of Hashem, who is the king, without the combination of what we call letters. For example, right? Day one of creation. We spoke about this yesterday. Day one is an expression of chesed, yehi or. Day two is an expression of gevura, yehi rakia, the separation, the division. So in order for that to come into instantiation, and in this case for it to be created, kigoin lebrias, to create the light, memidas chesed, to create light from the attribute of chesed. So nimshach mimenu hamshachas pa'ula, there is drawn from him a drawing out of action, v'koyach lepoel, from, quote, potentiality unto actuality. Why I say quote? Because there's no such thing as potential by God. He is always, always actual. But the koyach lepoel means from a deeper dimension into an express dimension to another. It's impossible for that to happen. That hamshacha, that the drawing down should come and out and down into revelation, should come from koyach lepoel, livre boy esaor, to create the light. The midah itself is not going to create the light, right? Just like our midah of chesed is not going to create the act of chesed, there has to be something more external. And this drawing down, which does create the light, instantiates the light, and instantiates or megala the koyach, reveals the koyach, and this life force, nikras b'shem maimon v'oisius, we call that speech, we call it, the Torah calls it, God calls it, to enable us to understand this, we call it a speech, and letters, which letters? The letters in this case, yehi or, let there be light. Even though these are not thoughts of ours, has v'sholem, right? This is a metaphor, speech, like light is also a metaphor. But nevertheless, this enables us to understand something about Hashem and Hashem's unity as it pervades in everything, from his thought from his midos to his thought to his speech. So as a result, these are the alinian. This is something which is hamoira al his hadasa or. We can speak about this as the speech, as the way that he instantiates and brings into being the light, me'ayin leyesh, from nothing to something, from inside him, so to speak, to outside of him, so to speak. And why am I saying so to speak? Because there is no inside or outside of Hashem, only from our perspective. Therefore, nivr ha'or mehamshoches koyach zeh, and therefore light is created from this particular hamshacha, this particular drawing forth of this particular power of this as of chesed with these particular words. And it doesn't create other things, which are also created from midas chesed. Right? Chesed is just expression, extension, moving from a point of depth to a point of expansion. Well, the whole of creation is like that, and that's why we say oilam chesed lebana, that the world is built with kindness, because but many things exist in this world, and not just light. So we have other things. So, but when he speaks yehi or, he takes that meat of chesed and manifests light. When he says yehi harakia, then he takes it the same. He wants something to exist, but he uses different language, different letters. So when he says yehi or, that's what's created is light and not other things, which are also created from the Midah of Chesed, Kamei Mayim, right? Mayim is unadulterated flow, right? It's just like light, not just like light, but in the sense that they're both flow. They're both something which by design flow. They move freely. So there's water, but water will be expressed in different letters. It's the Midah of Chesed in different letters. And the Midah of Chesed in different letters will be light. And others like this. Because the potential, the power, not potential, the power which exists in Hashem to create, which is essentially to come, as it were, from his innerness to a state where there's a yesh, something that perceives itself as something other than him, comes from all different kinds of combinations of letters, which shows on the high, the becoming into being of these other things. And in this case, we're talking about mayim as opposed to or, water as opposed to light. Benimsa, so it comes out, that all of the powers, all of the life force and the powers which are drawn from God's holy midos to the lower worlds, liborom, to create them, ma'ayin liyesh, from nothing to something, and to keep them and to bring them into life, and to continued existence, nikru b'shem oisius hakadoshis. They're called the holy letters. Now, just a sort of aside, the holy letters are the holy letters of the Hebrew alphabet. And as a result of that, since what we're saying now, the letters are the expression of God as he moves from internal, as we do, from thought to speech, right? Or from midos chesed, to thinking about it and then to speaking about it. So these letters, when they're instantiated in the Torah, Sefer Torah, or when they're used to in Maimer Chassidus, these letters are letters which are oisis kedoshis. As a result of being holy, the letters themselves tell big stories, and we can tell some of the stories maybe some other time of each of the letters, and it's all brought in Kabbalah and Chassidus, the understanding of the letters. So these letters they are ultimately pictograms of the way that Hashem is machaya, enlivened, and keeping everything in existence. These letters, these holy letters, back inside. Shehen bechinas hamshochas achayas, because the letters are various categories of the drawing down of life force, miratzoni b'chachmosei, from his will, and we're going down the chain now, from his will and his wisdom, umedoisav, and his midos, to bring worlds into being and to give them life. Behem, and these worlds that we're speaking about, they're shnei mine oilamis. There are two levels of worlds. We have almin steamim, hidden worlds, the Leis Galiad, which are not revealed. This is language of Kabbalah. Almin in Aramaic, almin steamim, the Leis Galiad, hidden worlds that are not revealed. So they come into being from levels of godliness which are still, so to speak, concealed from anything else because there's no externality yet. They're concealed. And these are metaphorically like words of thought, right? When I'm thinking thoughts, most people, with some exceptions, don't know what's going on in my head because it hasn't been externalized yet. There's a world, we said, the world of thought. So there is analogously the world of thought by Hashem, and these are real worlds, but they're not instantiated outside of him, relatively speaking. They're not outside of him yet. They're still inside of him, just as our letters of thought stay in our head before we speak. So these are like These are like letters of speech in the soul of a person, by way of example. So these are called Almin Stimin, the hidden worlds. And then we have Almin Isgalion, the revealed worlds. And these in Nivroi v'chayim u'misgalis, and these are created. Here's where we hear the creation. The creation comes, the word bria comes when there is a realized yesh, something that realizes itself as something separate from Hashem. So this is nivro. Then when we speak, it's out of our mouth, right? It's out of ourselves. It's out there in a level that's external to ourselves. And this is called nivro, creation. So these are called the revealed worlds. And these letters are created. Nivro chayim, are created and bring unto life things which are misgalis, which are revealed. Shemizgalu koichos v'hamshachas elalamis, where there is a revelation of the powers which had, at a deeper level, been concealed, the hidden worlds. Hanikrois b'shem oisis hamachshava, which the hidden, deeper worlds is called the letters of thought versus the letters of speech. And when these letters of thought become revealed in letters of speech, the hachis omin disgallion, to reveal revealed worlds, to bring into being revealed worlds, nikrahos b'shem maimores. They're called speeches, the Devar Hashem, and they're called the word of Hashem, the Ruach Piv, and the breath of his mouth. Kamei oisis hadibur, like the letters of speech, by a person, be'odam al derek mashal, by way of example. Shehen megalis, what do letters of speech do? They megala, they're revealed to shaimim, those who hear the word, the person speaking. Mashahoyasofan b'sosim b'liboy, that which was hidden and concealed in his heart. And that is today's Tanya, Gimel Tammuz. A revelation from concealment. And the point being, just like in his midos, Ihu v'gamehi chad, as we said yesterday, quote from the Zohar, he and his midos, or he and his kelim, he and his midos are one. So similarly, he and his speech is one. He and his speech are not separate things. So there's not this, even though we've been speaking, compartmentalizing it so that we can understand it. The difference is, as I said earlier, these things are not attributed to him. They are who he is, but who he is in different modalities of expression, so that every word in the Holy Tongue contains God himself. And as a result of that, every created being which is created through the speech contains God himself. All right, that is Tanya, and let's see what's going on over here. Thoughts? Any thoughts? Gimel Tammuz thoughts would be good too, I think. Oh, this is like the sun is stopped. Silence.
I have a question.
Not exactly.
Not exactly.
I have a question.
Somebody's got a hand up. I
It's
guess
Flo.
Rivka. Oh, Flo, go ahead.
I'll be next.
What is Gimel Tammuz? I'm brand new.
Oh, Gimel Tammuz is, and others can chime in because there's a lot to say, more than I know. Gimel Tammuz is today's date, right? Gimel Tammuz is the day that the Rebbe left us, whose soul moved on into the upper world. The Rebbe passed away on Gimel Tammuz. So Gimel Tammuz, this is the yortzeit of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. That's the simple.
As soon as I get that out, I don't.
You with me? Flo? It's the yortzeit of the Lubavitcher Rebbe.
Thank you so much.
It's a simple way of saying it. And then many things, okay, were written about it and come out of that, but that's a simple thing. Yeah, good. Thank you for asking. And by the way, a lot of people said to me on the side, I'm not asking any questions because, other people are just so smart. I've heard other people say that. That's a compliment to some of you in the group. But it's the questions that really, the simple questions and the bothersome questions or the total confusion, which I'm encouraging you to express when it's happening, because that's where right? We start with a groan. I don't get it. And then from there is the only way we're going to learn. As the Chazal say, a shy person will never become a good learner. Just bring out whatever you've got there. Okay, Rivka, your hands up.
Thank you. Yes. I think what the Tanya is telling us today, at least in part, is that everything we see around us is just a representation of something else, of something, as you say, deeper, and it's an expression. It's all an expression of godliness and
Right.
God's expression, and I think that's connected very much with Gimel Tammuz,
Yes.
in the sense that we are expressions. We can be expressions of the mission that we're sent here to do, with the Koyach the Rebbe, with Hashem's blessings, with Hashgacha Pratos at our side, and that we shouldn't be deterred in any way or discouraged, because there's so much power behind what we can do. We underestimate ourselves sometimes.
Good. Let me just hold that next thought. But on the contrary, we should feel very empowered because of the notion that, as Shimon Bar Yochai said about his own Histalkus, right? He said it was the Yom Hilula. It's a great celebration. Celebration meaning on the day of the Yortzeit, more powers are given to the tzaddik up above, and those powers flow down to us. So it's really a day to be open to the empowerment that comes from up above to below.
Right.
Just on the side thing.
Exactly. It means we have everything we need to do what we need to do. We just need to do it.
And we're getting a little bit of a more infusion of it on this particular day.
Yes.
Yeah.
God, you. Thank you. Yeah, tough.
I thought you said you had a question, but maybe you don't. Anybody else? All
I
right.
guess in that context, my question would be,
Oh,
why don't we feel this strength? Why do we doubt ourselves? That would be my question.
why do we doubt ourselves? We could all answer why we doubt ourselves. But part of it, I mean, but I
Or
don't
other
think it's the case.
people, or others, why,
Part of it is that we don't really know this in the sense of das. It hasn't been, we at least have the little bit advantage of how we're learning it and we're havana, we understand it, right? But we still, I'm going to translate your doubt into why don't we internalize this and live with the strength of it instead of living with the oy vey of it, because there is an oy vey of it, right? There is an oy vey about the passing of the tzaddik, and particularly the passing of the Rebbe. But I would answer that, and I think there are many ways of answering this, because we haven't internalized what this is. When Yeshua stopped the sun, it was a stop. Something, wait a minute, what's going on here? But it was a prelude to an empowerment. So if we understand it the right way and we take that understanding and bring it to heart, that eases, if not ceases, I don't know that it ceases, but it eases the doubt and brings out more power to do. But I would like other people to step up to why don't, I mean, I don't want to say why don't, what's keeping us, if there is anything keeping us from feeling Gimel Tammuz as a day of empowerment? Well, we don't have the Rebbe down here below, right? I can't see my teacher with my physical eyes. So the Rebbe Rashab said about his own passing, I'm going up and I'm leaving you my writings. And just like Hashem, saying, but this, you have to know this, you have to think about this. Just like Hashem invested himself in the Torah, right? He didn't come down here and he doesn't show himself. He can't, it's impossible. But he shows himself in his Torah. Anoichi, right? We've talked about this many times. God's in the word, the very first word of the Ten Commandments. God says, I'm investing my very self in the Torah. So the Rebbe Shah said, if you want to see me, connect with me. And the Rebbe said this about the Frierdiker Rebbe, on the other Rebbe, to connect with them is learning the Torah. Now, but it isn't just Havana, understanding. It's Makusha, it's Das, taking it to heart. That's my little answer. Thank you.
I'm going to take it much simpler.
Please.
I was just, my son just posted, he was at the OHEL, and I looked at his picture on WhatsApp, and it was my husband holding him and his brother getting kosher bracha, getting wine from the Rebbe. And that's, let's see, that's, I don't know, 38 years ago, maybe, picture. So I'm just seeing your whoever just walked by, it's looking at where I was when I came in 1980 and my family members or my friends that did not come through Lubavitch, did not become frum or not Shomer Shabbos, and where their families are and their lives are compared to the richness that I have, thank God, of being here. So that to me gives me a lot to think about on Gimel Tammuz.
Beautiful. Thank you.
We have a lot of gratitude to express in our actions. Yes.
Yeah.
All right. So let's depart our separate ways, though we're always together, and live out this Gimel Tammuz in the most effective way for ourselves. We'll see you tomorrow.
Did you go to the OHEL already?
Yeah, I did go. Yes, I
All
went
right.
last
You
night.
take our list, our class
Yeah.
list with you?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. Bye-bye. Till we meet tomorrow.
Shalom.